Travel during medical school made me a better doctor by teaching me how to listen and how to connect. I took a year off from medical school to work on HIV research in an African country called Malawi. While I was there, my roommate and I decided to take a long weekend trip to the coast of Mozambique. To give you a little background about these two countries in southern Africa, Malawi is landlocked and one of the poorest countries in the world, and Mozambique is still rebuilding from years of civil war in the 1980s and 90s. We took a 12-hour road trip on a single-lane, overcrowded highway. You never knew what you had to look out for, whether it be people on bicycles, various animals, or even herds of cattle. Once we got through border security and showed our visas, we drove my 1997 Honda CR-V into uncharted territory. And we quickly realized we weren't sure if we should be driving on the left side or the right side of the road. Malawi was colonized by the British, so everyone drives on the left side, but Mozambique was colonized by the Portuguese, and we weren't sure which side they drove on. Surprisingly, there didn't seem to be any other cars on the road, so we figured context clues would alert us in due time. With Malawian SIM cards, we didn't have any phone service once we crossed into Mozambique. Thus, we forged ahead with our preloaded Google Maps, following the blue dot of our car towards the Indian Ocean coast. The roads became increasingly rugged, with more mud and fewer buildings than we anticipated. We started seeing occasional makeshift stands with water bottles filled with a yellowish-green liquid. We were starting to get uneasy. Then we saw this sign. We couldn't read the sign, but the yellow and red communicated a sense of danger that transcended across cultures and language and rose our anxiety. Maybe we should have listened to the foreboding sign and turned back, but soon after I tried to drive around a ditch in the road and got our CR-V stuck. Now we were in rural Mozambique, without working phones or any Mozambican currency, stuck in a ditch and unable to push our car forward. We were scared. Luckily, some people happened to be walking down the road near us. Now, in Mozambique, people speak Portuguese or various Bantu languages. We spoke English, some Spanish, and a tiny bit of Chichewa, the language of Malawi. None of those were helpful. I was wondering, I wasn't sure what they thought of us standing by the side of the road with our car stuck at a steep angle, but a sense of needing help didn't require speaking the same language to cross cultures. The people passing by came and helped push our car out of the ditch. We wanted to thank them, but we couldn't with the language gap. We didn't have any money to offer because we hadn't been to an ATM yet, and we weren't sure how they would take a gift of granola bars from the back seat of our car. We settled on nodding and smiling as a way of communicating our thanks. We felt pretty foolish not being able to communicate our gratitude, that we only spoke English and were woefully underprepared for entering a new country. Thus, we continued forward and on these rugged roads, and we saw the needle of our gas tank slowly drift down. And we figured that the makeshift stands on the side of the road with yellow water bottles were a sort of gas station. We quickly pulled out our guidebook and taught ourselves the Portuguese word for thank you, obrigado. But you don't have to travel to Africa to struggle with connecting with others. Even when we speak the same language, our communication can falter. As a medical resident in North Carolina, I recently took care of a patient who was found on the floor of her apartment, unable to get up. Now, this wasn't the first time I had heard of an elderly patient who had likely fallen and didn't have the strength to get up or a phone in hand to call for help, and thus was found hours later by a family member or neighbor. When I asked her about her fall and how long she had been down, she told me that she hadn't fallen. She was lying on the floor of her apartment. This didn't make sense to me. I asked her, "Why hadn't you gone to bed? Why were you lying on the floor?" She informed me that she didn't have a bed. She had bed bugs a year ago and had to throw out her mattress. She had been sleeping on the floor for almost a year, and this was the first time she had trouble getting up. I felt so embarrassed and apologized. I looked at her lying on that hospital bed after a year of sleeping on the floor. What if I had asked the question a different way? What if instead of assuming that she had a bed, I asked, "How did you get to the floor? Tell me more." I asked the question the way that I had because of assumptions. And these assumptions likely came from socioeconomic differences. I expected my worldview to be the same as hers, and that assumption has led to repeated communication problems, both here and abroad. Travel has taught me a common thread of communication about asking questions without speaking the same language. Throughout my schooling, I have worked in Honduras, Uganda, Zambia, Malawi, and India. Each of these places has a rich culture that differs from mine and from each other's. They all have their own languages, even if some people speak English. And as a white American who mostly just spoke English, I was an outsider trying to look in. In college, I learned a little bit about how to look in by studying anthropology. Anthrop meaning human and ology, study of. Anthropology is the study of humans and culture. Wanting to go to medical school, I focused on medical anthropology, on learning how to embed culture within the practice of medicine. By understanding culture, we can be better healers. For example, a tribe in Papua New Guinea had a funeral cultural tradition of eating the bodies and brains of the dead. And this led to the spread of a protein that caused a fatal disease called kuru. Understanding that link helped prevent the spread of kuru. Another example involves the treatment of malaria, a parasite that is spread by mosquitoes in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Now, many people classify diseases as hot or cold, and the medicine to treat that disease should be the opposite. In other words, a hot disease is treated with a cold medicine. Now, if I tried to prescribe a hot medicine to treat a hot disease like malaria, people may not take that medicine. Adapting our explanations to fit cultural beliefs, then, could save lives. We have to speak the language and culture of our patients. The theme I took from my anthropology coursework was to suspend judgment. Rather than judge a tribe for eating the brains of the dead or a people for viewing disease as hot or cold, we could seek connection, embrace our differences, and build from there. Each of these experiences has taught me a lot. In Malawi and in India, I saw people, in Malawi and in India, I saw men and teenage boys walking down the road holding hands. In my culture, this likely meant that they were romantic partners. I had trouble not seeing it that way, even though homosexuality was heavily stigmatized in these places, and sometimes even illegal. People would be punished with beatings or lynching if found to be homosexual. Yet, they still held hands. It seemed that if you denied the existence of homosexuality, you virtually erased homophobia. When I was in high school, the phrase "no homo" was perpetuated. This was used right after a male expressed emotional or physical connection to another male. It came from a place of fear that you might be labeled as gay or you might be stigmatized against. In Malawi and India, though, male friends felt open to express the bond they shared without fear. This puzzled me. On the one hand, men could freely express love they had for a friend. On the other hand, this arose in a place where the phrase no homo was irrelevant because many people viewed homosexuality as it didn't exist or shouldn't exist. When trying to form new male friends within their cultural contexts, I noticed the learned discomfort that I felt simply when a handshake lasted longer than I was used to. Suspending judgment helped me learn to stay open in those situations, to embrace those differences. In preparation for this talk, I reached out to several friends and colleagues in various countries about ways in which I could have improved my communication with them. One of my favorite responses was from a young man I met in India on a bus. We only spent a few hours together, but have stayed in touch. We toured a fort near Jaipur and ate lunch on the roof of a building. When we were trying to find our way, he suggested that we ask for directions. I informed him, American men don't ask for directions. Though I have since forgotten that comment from 2 years ago, he reminded me of it, likely because it stuck in his mind as different, as a missed opportunity for connection. I could have stayed open to his perspective, to asking questions. These collisions of culture have occurred for me frequently through my travels abroad and helped prepare me for a variety of clinical encounters here in the US. In Malawi, I ate lightly fried locusts that I bought at a local supermarket. I changed a tire after driving over a stick on the road with the help of a woman who at first didn't understand why we're standing on the side of the road and then told me I was changing the tire incorrectly. I even danced to Train's Hey Soul Sister with some people we met on the side of a mountain who were hanging up their clothes to dry. Each of these taught me to embrace the differences and similarities between us as humans on this earth. If we seek connection, then we can achieve the human connection that we're all capable of. This photo is from the grounds where we lived in Malawi. It communicates to me a sense of beauty that transcends across countries and cultures. There are probably times in each of your lives where you looked at the people around you, and connected with them, whether you were watching fireworks or riding a roller coaster, even if you shared little else in common. By choosing to listen, by attempting to understand those from a different clique, team, cubicle, or neighborhood, you open yourself to new possibilities. You get to decide the type of adult that you will become. You can become one who listens to the other side, to those who differ, or not. Whether your future clients, in-laws, classmates, coworkers, or even strangers, everyone approaches life a little differently from you. By checking our assumptions at the door, suspending judgment, and truly listening, we might be able to ask questions that bridge the language gap and receive answers we never thought we had the words for. Thank you.